Good morning and a warm welcome to the 6th edition of Taxsutra Conclave 2023. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years, a gap of 3 years. It just feels like maybe a year and a half back we had the conclave, and it's a wonderful feeling. Trust me, my colleagues, Kalpana, Nishchay, they had to pull me out of my deep slumber to get this restarted. But it feels so nice to be among all of you after a gap of 3 years. A force majeure event ensured that we had to take a break, but hopefully that break will not happen, at least for our generation again, not for that reason at least. A warm welcome to Taxsutra Conclave. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today as we come together to discuss the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in the ever-evolving world of tax, specifically international tax. As we gather here, we are joined by tax professionals, policymakers, academics, and business leaders from around the world who share a common goal to exchange ideas, insights, and experiences that will help us better navigate the complexities of tax laws and regulations, and to ensure that our tax systems remain fair, efficient, and effective. The next 3 days promise to be a rich and rewarding experience as we explore the latest developments in tax technology, tax policy, and compliance. I encourage you all to take advantage of the networking opportunities, engage with your fellow attendees and participants, and participate in the various sessions, discussions, and workshops that have been planned. Without further ado, let's begin our journey of discovery, learning, and let us work together to shape the future of tax. Thanks for joining us, and I wish you all a productive and enjoyable conference. This usually would have taken me 30 minutes to write every morning. This speech has been totally written by ChatGPT. I did not spend a minute writing this. And the message is very clear. When I spoke to one of my friends who's a leadership partner in a large tax firm, and she told me that the world is changing, and it is changing too fast. And it is in that backdrop that we are holding this conclave. 8 years back, we thought that BEPS, when we did our first conclave in 2015, and the theme was BEPS, we all felt that the world of international tax is undergoing a metamorphosis. It will never be the same again. You know, the debate between what is the right tax to pay, what is a fair tax to pay, about moral tax, and so on and so forth. And 8 years later, we are seeing a completely different world. We don't know whether technology will upend us. Of course, we still have the debates around the two-pillar solution and the likes. But yes, we are gathering at not a tumultuous time, at an exciting time, a time like never before, at least for our generation. Before I formally begin the conclave, and I invite my good friend and senior journalist Pawan on stage for a conversation, and then Dali as well. I would like to dedicate this conclave to a friend who's not here among us, who was there for every conclave, each edition, used to take the flight from Mumbai, be the first to get up in the morning to wish me that the conclave goes well, whose Jai Shri Krishna really made me look forward to the opening address of every conclave, who's not amidst us, a consummate tax professional, someone who was very, very, very dear to me and Taxsutra, Jayesh Kapani. We miss him, and I hope his blessings will take us through the next 3 days of the conclave. I invite my good friend Pawan on stage, and Pawan, I know you gave me a profile. I found it too boring. I found it too boring to read. So I said, let's engage with ChatGPT. ChatGPT, the fun part is that you've got to get what is wrong, and then to tutor it. So I engaged in a conversation today morning at 6:30 with ChatGPT on Pawan. The fun part is, you know what? It's already bestowed some awards on Pawan, which he's not won. I wish Pawan Pulitzer was one of them.
Well, that's really
But
kind of you.
that portends something great to come for you. So here is the profile of Pawan Lal brought to you by ChatGPT with a little bit of moderation and edit uh, from me. Pawan is a veteran journalist with over 2 decades of experience in the field of media. He's worked for various leading media organizations, including Bloomberg, UTV, and Forbes magazine, and has interviewed some of the biggest Indian industrialists. He is currently a freelance journalist who writes for several top publications, including Business Standard, Mint, Money Control, and Taxsutra. Pawan is also a published author with several books to his credit. His book on the fugitive Nirav Modi was widely acclaimed, as was his book on Rana Kapoor. His latest book, Forging Metal, is the life story of industrialist Nupendra Rao, the promoter of Pennar Group, and has also garnered considerable attention. Throughout his career, Pawan has demonstrated deep commitment to investigative and incisive journalism and a willingness to tackle challenging and often controversial topics as well. He is known for his insightful and incisive reporting. Pawan, ChatGPT has a lot of good things to say about you.
Yeah, I've seen. Well, I hope you haven't edited it too much.
I didn't have to. It did mention that he's worked for New York Times. I told him no. We won't let him go back to the US where he spent his first 10 years in media. But Pawan, the world is changing.
Yeah, indeed, it is. You know, I was just looking at the headline news yesterday, and there's so much happening, right? Airlines are going under, you have political leaders who are retiring, and of course, technology is taking center stage, as you had, alluded to and mentioned just a few minutes ago. One of the things that I've noticed is that, large auditing accounting firms are also headed towards technology, right? I mean, there's talk about how the big four may be the not so big eight in the near future. And it would be interesting to know what you think about that and some of our colleagues think about that later on as we progress.
I think technology is, Pawan, becoming the backbone of many tax and consulting practice. It is undeniable. Of course, I would think that human touch is required. I would think that just as I engaged this morning with ChatGPT, even if tomorrow ChatGPT were to take over the Taxsutra function of reporting on tax news, I hope that an editor's touch will still be required, which will keep me in.
No, I think you can't get away without the human touch, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at the analysis of large language models and what the mainstream experts are saying, technology always has a double-edged sword, any technology, right? And while we see all the productivity that comes with ChatGPT, whether it's the speeches that you've taken full advantage of or something else, I think the reality is that we have to also look really far out in determining how this can shake out. Say if a criminal organization gets hold of a really sophisticated ChatGPT tool and starts replicating financial information, financial institutions, platforms. I don't want to let my imagination run too far, but those scenarios have to be thought through.
Yeah, someone who's written a book on Nirav Modi, I wouldn't expect any. That's Pawan, boardroom. Governance has been the mantra for the last 4 months, ever since a bombshell report came out from the US. And that surely is the theme for many boardrooms this quarter. You think it's changed the corporate governance dynamics?
I think it was coming for a long time, Heidelberg report or not. I think if you look at the way the world has moved post-pandemic, there's been a lot of talk about ESG, which is one of the corollaries to governance and boardroom functioning and the role of independent directors. But I think largely in the multinational environment that we operate today, which involves not just tax frameworks and rules and regulations, but also best practices, if India is to sort of seize that shining moment and become the next economic force in the emerging world, I think there is no way but to operate in the same way that is being operated upon internationally. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, then automatically, willy-nilly, the system has to force change in that direction, which is what I hope we are in the inflection point of doing.
And when you talk to foreign investors and you talk to some of the biggest ones, including private equity and others, what do they make of ESG? Is this the next big thing, or is it just another fad which will disappear in 2 to 3 years?
No, I think ESG is fairly complex subject because according to the UNDP 21-point or 22-point checklist, each section of environment and then social and governance has their own separate ramifications. And I think you have companies today that are looking at targeting them very, very specifically. I don't believe this is a passing phase. The names may change. In some senses, CSR was kind of similar to ESG maybe 10 years ago, but ESG is being taken much more seriously. You have markets in the United States where I think companies are not going to shy away from this. It is a reflection of also the younger generation in our world today as to what they see as important. I don't think millennials want to do business unless it has to do with environmentally free products, carbon-free footprints, and things of that nature.
You go for many of these foreign joints, Pavan. You do check the automobile sector. How they are performing, not only here in India but overseas. Their best practices, you study them, report on them. One of your recent trips abroad, can you just describe the experience? What did you see which we could learn from?
Well, I think the focus, and you're referring to a trip where I went to Europe. I had gone to 2 countries recently, to Italy and to Finland. And I think one of the more obvious trends is the focus on plastics, the focus on recycling, the focus on environmentally product usage, use of glass, use of wood, and things of that nature. And I think the environment in India is, of course, something that needs to be uplifted to the next level. This does have a tax implication. This does have carbon credits in terms of structuring, and some of that is being worked upon. But Arun, let me flip a couple of questions back to you now.
And then we'll invite Dali on stage.
Absolutely. We see a lot of boardroom conversations. What are the trends that you are picking up specifically in terms of responsible tax, in terms of structuring taxes, in terms of, we now live in a multinational world, right? The world's largest tech company was here, a CEO was here a few weeks ago opening stores in 2 cities. The world is, in that sense, become a much more level playing field to some extent. So what do you see happening with taxation?
On taxation, Pawan, I think since you use the word boardroom, I think that largely defines how a tax function within a corporate operates. And there are corporates for whom the ETR, the effective tax rate, is non-negotiable. So you have to achieve the effective tax rate. I know of such corporates. That pressure is incredible. So as a tax head, on the one hand, you're expected to pay your fair share of taxes. On the other hand, the board expects you, to achieve an effective tax rate of maybe 21%, 22%, whatever it may be. It's not easy, number one. Number two, as much as people may say that we're going to be responsible when it comes to taxes, we are going to put out a tax transparency report and so on and so forth. At the core, tax hits your bottom line.
Yeah.
Tax hits your bottom line.
It does, yeah.
And which is why the way we are brought up, the tax function, the CFO function, it's all about margins. As they said, it's the economy stupid. In 1992, when Bill Clinton won the US elections, it's the margin stupid. So as much as we would like to talk about tax transparency, tax governance, non-adversarial nature, but I still feel that the very nature of that job, the very nature of the function means that corporates will be looking at maximizing shareholder profits. That's what they are for. And the tax department will look at maximizing their revenues. Will there be a common ground that we'll find in some years? Maybe, maybe not. But that's where I think we are. Look at 3 years back, look at now, the litigation landscape has not changed one bit. If at all, there are more litigations. If at all, there are more disputes. The difference is in the stakes. 10 years back, you had Shell, Vodafone, all facing scrutiny. And those numbers were running into $1 billion, $2 billion. Today, those sort of figures may not even make headlines anymore. That's a given. If you are a big corporation, you will have big disputes. I met one of the tax heads of one of the Fortune 500 companies who told me that my mandate is to minimize the tax outgo. And if I have to take an aggressive position, which I can later defend in an assessment or in the courts, I will do it. So that I think sums up the approach. Dali, can we please have you on stage? A big hand for Dali Buzura, please. Dali is the president of Orbitax, which is a very futuristic tax technology company based in the US. Dali himself is the former technical director of IBFD, a co-founder of Orbitax. And Dali, over the next, we have still 5 to 7 minutes. Dali, tell us what are Fortune 500 companies thinking? You know, they use your tax technology services. When it comes to tax technology, when it comes to tax issues, you know, what are Fortune 500 companies? What are some of the largest corporations in US and Europe thinking?
I think if you want to sum it in one word, is dealing with complexity, right? And this complexity comes especially from increased compliance requirements all over the place. So we deal a lot with North America, with the US, with the MENA countries, and sometimes you wonder why all of this, because I'm not sure that all this data that's actually flowing now to the revenue service, whether it is used for really being used by revenue services. Probably revenue services themselves are not really equipped to deal with that much data. So if I look at Europe, for example, we do have now what we call the DAX, it's anti-avoidance directives. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we are having DAX 7, which is dealing with reporting by platform operators for e-commerce. Just exchanging information about trading and that sort of things on e-commerce platforms between the member states. We are talking about a new initiative which is called, actually, I have to recognize they are always good at finding very nice sounding acronyms for stuff. So this one is called BFIT 55, which stands, the FIT at least stands for a framework for income tax within the European Union. And the idea of this new BFIT thing is to arrive at coordinated rules to calculate taxation of businesses within the European Union, so that it would be like a level playing field within the European Union. There are a lot of course, the pillars that we are talking about. So if you look at Pillar 2, for example, which is causing headaches for a lot of multinationals, the amount of data that you need for that is staggering. And it's not certain that that data is easily locatable, easily pullable, that you can pull it and use it actually. Just to give you an example, the amount of data points needed to make a calculation for this Pillar 2. This Pillar 2, basically, what does it say? It says that multinationals have to pay a minimum of 15% effective tax rate on their business operations in all countries where they have operations, right? And the idea is to get rid of what they call damaging tax competition that pulls everybody down, right? And so they agreed on this level, 15% minimum tax in all jurisdictions, which is very easily said, But to get there is pretty difficult. So you need 120 data points to make the calculations.
120?
122 to be exact.
And this is in Europe?
No, this is, every company will need to make this, they will need 122 data points, which come from different places.
Yeah. Tonight, after the cocktail, whoever gets this, remembers 122, will get a special prize.
Right. So in order to make the calculation, because the calculations, you make them by jurisdictions as well. So, and there is something they call the information return, which is really like a tax return for this 15%. The OECD has developed like some kind of a sample information return. For this information return, there are 24 lines that you need to fill in. And to fill in exactly, I mean, this is not like a guessing game. It's really an amount of, that leads to an amount of tax, right? So if you have like 400 entities, and that's really not uncommon to have 400 entities. We were dealing with the US company lately, that 4,500 entities. 4,500 entities. 500 and a bit, I forgot the bit. All right. This is an entity, this is a multinational that's active in the entertainment business. And obviously in that business, they use one company per project. And that explains the staggering number. But entities among multinationals, US, North American, European multinationals, and up to 1,000 entity is almost standard, right? So you have 400, you have 24 lines. These are 10,000 data points that need to be collected, checked, and I said it's not a guessing game. It's something that really goes into return, right?
And Ali, where will this complexity take us? 30 seconds. You said we are in a world dealing with complexity. Where will this complexity lead us to? Will it lead us to more clarity or more chaos?
It's a good question. Well, first of all, it sort of reinforces the role of technology in the tax function, because basically without technology, it's a lost cause. You're not going to be able to do this, right? And it's not the only thing. You know, it's country-by-country reporting requires the same thing. Provisioning requires all these complexities. DAC 6 or you know, this DAC 6, I'm sure you know quite a bit about tax, but maybe these acronyms sort of, so this DAC 6 is an obligation within the European Union, but also a number of other countries. Mexico is one of them, the UK now is no longer EU, is to actually disclose all your transactions or structures that are deemed to potentially be tax aggressive, right? You have to actually disclose them to the taxman, right? It's basically
a self-disclosure.
Yeah, you can imagine that you go to your doctor, you make a scan, and then your insurance company says, give me the scan, right? It works a little bit like this, right? So to do all of this, you need technology, right? There are actually two areas, I think, of concern here. One area of concern is, there are multinationals who are equipped to deal with this, right? And there are thresholds that have been agreed. So for example, for this Pillar 2, there is a threshold of 750 million euro in revenue, right? For the Pillar 1, is a much higher threshold. It's 20 billion, right? And under that Pillar 2, there are, I think, like between 85 and 100 multinationals in the world that will be caught by Pillar 1, right? And these are a huge we're talking Amazon, we're talking, you know, Facebook, we're talking Google, we're talking Apple. They're huge multinationals. And one would assume that they would have the resources to deal with these matters, right? But what do tax authorities do with it? Can they deal with it? Sure. Take the tax authorities of medium European countries like Belgium or Portugal or Spain or something. Yeah. What kind of resources do they have to deal with all this amount of data and information?
Don't worry, India does. India does not have that problem.
I'm going to ask you one.
That's very useful. Yeah.
I just want to ask you one quick question. I know we have
30
crunched
seconds
for time, but just in a word or two, what is the biggest challenge facing tax professionals, auditing firms, and the tax industry today worldwide? Just in a word or two.
Really, I think it's basically what Arun has mentioned. There are opposed actually requirements from them. One is
Conflicting requirements. You mean.
yeah, conflicting requirements from them within the tax function
Within
itself.
the
That's a very important point, right? And resources are thin in most tax departments. I was dealing with the tax department yesterday. I think 12,000 employees. The tax department is 5 people, right? I think that's one
That
of the
sums
main
it up.
problems.
Yeah, a company with 12,000.
Pawan, final
professionals.
word, I know, just hang on for a minute, Dali. Pawan, I know you bump into some of the biggest celebrities, during your morning gym sessions. Any conversation that struck you, any one line, 2 lines about India that any foreign investor said that struck with you?
No, I think not necessarily at the gym only, Arun, but even otherwise. But I think some of the takeaways that I've noticed is that regardless of all the aches and pains that our economy has today, and everybody seated here in this room knows that we do have problems. Every economy, every market has problems. But I think fundamentally we have a very large population. A lot of it is educated. It's a very aspirational population. It's an English-speaking population. And this is a relatively free market where a lot of things can potentially work. It's not exactly Iron Curtain or a hardcore 1960s communist era structures, right? And I'm not debating one way or the other, but I'm simply telling it like it is. So we do have problems. I think we also have a lot of upside. And I think they're seeing the cup half empty for opportunity in that sense.
Incredible. That reminds me of what Akhilesh sir told us at his first speech after taking over as the competent authority around 9 years back. He said India is different, not difficult.
Absolutely.
A big hand for Pawan and Dali,
Thank
please.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Arun.
Thanks. So, Dali threw a term at us. We all need to go back and study that. It's called DAC 6. Yeah, can I just request the panel, the dais to be set up? We'll start the next session in the next 2 to 3 minutes, and I'm going to continue what I did a while back. The moderator is Sanjay Tolia, and I did not take a profile from him. I again went to ChatGPT. It again told me certain things about Sanjay which he is not, but I edited that, and I've come up with a good profile of his. Sanjay, you'll have to sue ChatGPT if I get it wrong. And the session is, I think, we had a good prelude to the opening session with the discussion with Pawan and Dali. I think it's been a good setup, the new world of responsible and automated taxes. And I must say, this was not in the original agenda, but knowing Sanjay, the one good part about it, no, ChatGPT will not tell me this is my friendship with him. Every time you meet him, he'll challenge you to think differently. He'll challenge you to do something new. And,